Hi everyone. So today we are going to be talking about why you may not have reached your immigration goals, why you haven't started on your immigration goals, and what you can still do to reach those goals now that we're in October of 2024. If you follow me at all, I did a video on in January, where I talked about why 2024 is the year to apply for your green card, citizenship, whatever it may be. This is the time to do it because there's going to be some changes depending on what happens with the election, and you want to file while the current state of things are stable. That's what you really want to do. So I made that video in January and I just want to check in with you, right? Have you made moves towards getting your green card, getting your citizenship, applying for that visa? So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. What you can do at this stage to set yourself up really well for 2025, why you should be filing your applications now and not waiting until 2025. So if you have questions, as always, put them in the comments. I want to make this a discussion because honestly, we all make goals. Right? We all make goals at the beginning of the year. Some of us, leave those, and some of us go through with them. So let's talk about what was standing in your way and how I can best support you either through this channel or personally through the law firm to help you get to where you want to be. All right. So if you are new here and you don't know who I am attorney Lillian Chukura. I am a US-based immigration attorney, and I help my clients get green cards and citizenships for themselves and their families using the US immigration law system. So like I said, if you have questions, I did make this a Q&A so that you can ask me questions and we can talk about what has been standing in your way, what are the things that you are concerned about that has made you hold off on applying for things, and how we can, support you through that. So first thing is, if you had a goal, of getting your green card or filing for your spouse, your children, and you have not taken that step, feel free to tell me in the comments what has stopped you from taking those steps, right? What stopped you from applying for your green card, your citizenship, that visa that you want? Put them in the comments so I can address it in future videos and make sure that you are getting the information and support you need as you are going through the process. Now, why should you still file in 2024 instead of waiting for 2025? This is really important. And I know, it's the end of the year, holidays are coming up, Thanksgiving, Christmas, all of that is coming up. And this is just an additional thing to add to that. But when you really think about it, going through the immigration process can make those holidays even better, because at the end of the whole process, now you either have a green card, you have your family together in the same space, or you are now a citizen and you can live where you want and you are not limited by the fact that you are only a permanent resident. Okay, so all of that matters. All right, so the first reason that I think that everyone that wants to file, that qualifies to file, should start the process is because we are in an election year, right? That has not changed. If you have turned on the news, if you have been you're on YouTube, you're on Facebook, you're on Instagram, I'm sure you're seeing the ads as much as I am, okay? So it's an election year. And depending on what happens on November 5th, it can go one way or the other. Now, not telling you who to vote for, just being realistic, right? Depending on who wins, there's going to be some changes in immigration, right? So it's important to get in now, have your applications filed now, because if the person that wins is not pro immigration, including legal pathways to immigration, you may end up in a situation where you know that thing you want to file for is no longer available, so you can't even get in 2025. So just make sure that if you are on the fence, get a consultation. Make sure you qualify and take steps to get you where you want to be. Because yes, election year, things can change. Okay, immigration law is one of the few places that the presidency matters, right? Whoever is the executive, right? The executive branch of the United States. That's the president's domain, and immigration law is under that. So whoever is the president is going to have a lot of influence on what happens with immigration, how it's enforced, who has priority for deportation, right? They pick the head of the Department of Homeland Security. They pick the head of ICE, right? There's so many parts of immigration that's all the president's picks. So you want to make sure that regardless of what happens in November, that you are putting yourself first, that you are going ahead and making sure where you stand and what is possible. All right. So do not wait. Do not wait. I do see a question here, so we can go ahead and answer the questions. Remember, if you have questions, put them in the comments, okay? This is a Q&A while we talk about how to achieve your immigration goals, all right? So if you are in removal proceedings based on pending asylum case, can you marry a permanent resident and do adjustment of status? So great question. In order to adjust your status in the US, you have to have legal status, right? You have to have a status that you are still currently in. Pending asylum is not a status, right? It allows you to remain in the US, but it is not a legal status that you can adjust your status from. Okay? Adjustment of status means you're going from one status to the other. And when you marry a permanent resident, you cannot adjust your status unless you are currently in a legal status. In order for you to get a green card through that marriage, your spouse will need to file for you. You will then need to apply for a waiver and then leave the US to complete the process and come back with that immigrant visa to then get your green card mailed to you. That would be the process with a permanent resident spouse in this particular situation. Now, if your spouse is close to getting their citizenship and goes ahead and applies for citizenship, they may be able to file for you if and only if you entered either with legal status, meaning you had a visa to come into the US, or you were from a country that has a visa waiver program with the US. So if you entered in one of those two things, you can adjust status based on a US citizen spouse, right? If you were admitted into the US on parole, not all parole, but on certain types of parole, you would be able to adjust your status in the US if your spouse is a US citizen. So I always encourage spouses in this situation to figure out when do you qualify for citizenship and go ahead and apply for citizenship as soon as you qualify so that you can then file that I-130 and maybe the adjustment of status application if you are in a place where you had that admission and you are considered an arriving alien. So super, super important that you know where you stand. And if your spouse is a permanent resident currently and they can apply for citizenship, they should go ahead and apply for citizenship. It will make your process a whole lot easier if you had admission or parole. All right. Next question. All right. So this person entered with a visiting visa in October through Canada. What can I do to stay legal in the US? You would need to either change your status in the US or adjust your status. Those are your two options. So if you're changing your status, you're going from the visiting visa, the B1, B2, to a different non-immigrant status. So for example, you can go from a B1, B2 to a student visa, right? From B1 to B2 to an employment-based visa. Okay, so you want to look at your options as far as whether you can change your status to a student, change your status by getting employment in the US, and that employer being willing to file for you. If you are a Canadian citizen, there's something called a TN visa that you may qualify for depending on your background and if you have an employer willing to sponsor you for it. So there are options available to you, more than some countries, but you want to make sure that you do not overstay your visa while you explore those options. Once you overstay your visa, it's going to be harder for you to get a non-immigrant visa in the future, and it's also going to be harder for you to get status in the US in general, because once you overstay, your options become very limited. You now no longer have access to employment-based options, which again, if you're a Canadian citizen, you have more things available to you. So you may want to take advantage of those and apply to different places and see if they're willing to sponsor you. Okay. And also feel free to schedule a strategy session so that we can kind of explore your different options as well. Depending on your background, you may qualify for a lot of other things, but I can't get into it on the line. I need a lot more information about you to be able to actually give you that information, okay? So feel free to do that. And then Emmanuel, applying for immigration now offers you at least certain protection if anti-immigration president is elected. If so, hopefully, what protection immigrants who already filed I-130 form have? So this is a great question. So it does not, I want to make sure I am clear on what protections you get. So there's certain types of benefits that certain, I'm trying to be very diplomatic in my answer. So certain candidates have an issue with these different types of family-based immigration options, and there's certain candidates that are not a fan of some of them, and if they win the presidency, Senate, and House, one of the things they plan on doing is trying to do away with those protections. So, for example, filing for siblings, filing for married children, things like that. So, in those situations, if the case is already filed, right, and then Congress chooses to, end family-based immigration for siblings or family-based immigration for married children, if Congress chooses to do that and it passes, by law, it's typically not retroactive. So if you already have your application processing, they have to process your application. They have to go through with the whole thing, right? Because you already put yourself in a position and you already applied for it. So they can't apply new laws. If they take it away, it won't apply to people that already filed. That's what I mean that you want to protect yourself, because some of these things may not exist if, one of the candidates win. So that's what I mean by protecting yourself and giving you certain protections, is by filing, you're kind of locking in that benefit. So if it changes in the future, you have grounds to fight it, right? You have grounds to fight it in court, to have your voice heard on it. But if you don't file for it and it's taken away, it's harder to explain the harm that will come to you if the applications are not processed. That's the same thing that happened with um, people that already filed for DACA and had it approved. US government has to keep renewing it. They can't just stop renewing DACA applications, right? But if the person did not file before the court, did not already have it approved before the court cases that shut it down, they now are just waiting in limbo, waiting for a final decision that may let them continue with DACA or not. So that's why it's really important to kind of get those going. Next question. Some of these questions are not coming in order, so if you have questions, put them in the comments. This is a Q&A, and we can talk about how, you can still achieve those immigration goals. All right. I'm still pending my I-751 based on cruelty and divorce. Is it okay to remarry despite waiting on the adjudication of my case? Ooh, okay. Great question. So if you're already divorced, can you remarry? I don't think it's a question of can you, it's more of a question of should you. Those are two different questions, right? Can you and should you are two different things. Can you? Yes, you can, right? Yes, you can remarry. Should you? I would wait for a decision first. Not just me. But can you? Absolutely, you can. Absolutely, you can. But I will just wait for a decision first. If you want, so sometimes people want to abandon their I-751 and file a new application through their new spouse. If that's the case, that's perfectly fine. But if you are not intending to, do away with your I-751, you may just want to wait, right? Depending on how long it's been pending. Those are taking right now, we're seeing like 2 to 3 years. So depending on how long it's been pending, you may just think about, how much time you've been waiting and if you can wait a little bit longer to have that adjudicated. All right. Question from Instagram, Euphoria. What is the easiest way to have a friend come from Zambia to New York for a visit? Whew. There's no easy way, right? We can be honest with each other now. When you are coming from certain countries, there's no easy way unless the person that wants to come for that visit has a lot of money, has a job that pays them really well, or they're high up in the company. They have family that has a lot of money, right? There has to be things that the person can show that means that they will not go, they will not stay in the US. So it's not really about easy, it's about what the person can prove. So if you're just coming for a visit to the US, the option available to you is a B2 visa, right? It's a visiting visa. So if that is the option available to you, then that friend that wants to come needs to be able to show that they will go back, right? The things that they need to look at is, do they have employment? Do they have family that rely on them? Do they have a lot of money? I hate to say it, right? Let's be honest with each other. I hate to say it, but the people that are able to do that are people that have the money, have influence, right? By influence, I mean like either the family has influence or they have influence. And I don't mean influence over immigration officers. I mean influence in the country in general. So the son, so I'm from Nigeria, so that's where I can draw from. The child of the richest man in Nigeria, Dangote, his children will have the easiest time ever getting a visa to the US. Okay? I'm sure they all already do. Um, but if your family do not have money, and you yourself don't have money, you can't show that you have these strong ties to your country, it's going to be hard. So when I say there's no easy way, there's no easy way. The person has to really prove that they will not go back, that they will go back. Sorry. And the easiest way to show that is by showing income, right? Is by showing that you have money. Is by showing that you have influence, that you are, necessary for your job, right? If you are the CEO of a company with multiple employees, you're going to have an easier time than if you are a college, a university graduate that is currently unemployed, right? Do you get what I mean? So there's no easier, there's just the option available is the B2 visa, and your friend needs to fit into the box of the B2 visa. And if they don't fit into the box, they will be denied. All right. So if you have questions, please put them in the comments. So happy to have you all here and be able to answer your questions. All right. So we talked about how the election is a reason that you should be filing your application now rather than later. Another reason is, honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you, time, right? Time. The longer you wait, the longer it's going to take. I have people that come to me and they're like, oh, I've been a citizen for like 10 years. And, when I became a citizen, I was told to file for my siblings, but it was going to take like 20, it was going to take 15 years and I didn't want to do that. And 10 years already passed, right? So time does move fast. And even though you look at the visa bulletin or you look at processing times and you're just discouraged by how long things are taking, you are not in line for anything until you file, right? That processing time does not apply to you because guess what? 10 years ago, things were moving much faster than they are today. So the longer you wait, the longer it's going to take. All right. So you want to make sure that you are getting your application in, making sure you qualify. Feel free to schedule a strategy session and let's see if you qualify and at least have a plan, right? At a minimum, have a plan of how you're going to reach your goal of either getting a green card for yourself, getting an immigrant visa for your siblings, for your children, for your spouse, for your parents, like whatever it is that is your goal. And for most of my clients, the goal is not even the visa or the green card itself. It is the ability to be in the same space at the same time with their family without any fear that someone's going to be deported, without any fear that, oh, if you go over here and you get into, if you're pulled over, you could end up in ICE custody, right? Those are the things that people are worried about. So if that is you and you're worried about those things, it may be time to go ahead and file your applications. Another thing, and again, it ties back to the election, but I'm gonna do it, is that depending on who wins, enforcement is going to be different, right? We know what happened during the last presidency with enforcement. So we saw the Muslim bans and countries being put on the blacklist where, yes, you filed, but nothing is going to be moving. So you want to kind of try and get ahead of that. Typically it takes them, some time to start doing all of those things. So you want to get in there now and start that time going. But it is going to be November 5th is going to be an interesting day for a lot of people. And as an immigration lawyer, I am going to be watching that day closely to see what's going on. And then probably the week after, so depending on what happens, the week after that, we can talk about the outcome and what that means for us. In the immigration world, right? Me as an immigration lawyer that helps people apply for green cards and citizenships. And then you, the audience, as someone that may be interested in applying for green cards and citizenships for themselves and their families. So we'll talk about all of that. So if you have questions about that between now and then, please feel free to ask me and we can continue the discussion on what that can possibly look like for us. So that's really, really important. All right. So, only Kish, what stage are you safe in your immigration process? It depends on where you are, right? If you already have your I-130 approved, if you are physically in the US and you're adjusting your status in the US, you need to go ahead and apply for your adjustment of status immediately, right? If you're physically in the US and you qualify for adjustment and you haven't filed it, go ahead and file it. Having a pending adjustment of status is a safer place to be than just having an approved I-130. Right? Because some people can have an approved I-130, but they're still required to apply for a waiver and leave the US. So if you're in the US and you're able to do that and apply for adjustment of status, do that. That's going to be a safer position than the just having the I-130 alone. Now, if you are applying outside of the US, if you have an approved I-130 and you have not completed your DS-260 and are documentarily qualified, you need to make sure that you do that. Okay. There are situations where there's no safe place. Okay. There are situations that is going to come up or may, let's not put that out there, that may come up that would not have any safe spot. But you should not let the fear stop you from starting. So, like I said, if you're in the US, just make sure you are doing your part in completing the process, right? Doing your part and making sure that the only thing that's remaining is a decision from USCIS. Okay. If you are outside of the US, the same thing. Make sure you have all your documentation in, and the only thing that's missing is that decision from the embassy. And those are going to be a big deal, right? It's going to be a big deal, and you're going to kind of not feel safe until you know for sure what's going on. And I know that. Okay. So we will really, I don't want to make this negative, but we will talk about that. What you can do, what stages you need to be in to prepare in case we need to worry about an anti-immigration president. Okay. So stay tuned. We'll do a full deep dive after the election on what we can be doing and where things are going to stand. I know for sure with the people I'm most concerned about are people that do not have an immediate relative that's a US citizen. Okay. If you do not have an immediate relative that's a US citizen, you are going to be, it's going to be a lot easier for your case to be delayed by any immigration things that come up. But if you are the immediate relative of a US citizen, you're going to have more protection because US citizens have more protection. So immediate relatives of US citizens are their spouse, their parents, and their unmarried children that are under the age of 21. Those are the immediate relatives of US citizens. And they are most the ones that are typically protected when these things happen. So even when the Muslim ban was in place, even when like all those things were happening, immediate relatives of US citizens were still able to get their visas, to get their green cards. So that's a safe place to be, is being an immediate relative of a US citizen. All right. All right, next question. If I have had my fingerprints taken at my school or somewhere else before I have them taken at the embassy, does my prior fingerprints show up? Well, your fingerprints are your fingerprints, right? So your fingerprints do not change. The reason the embassy would want your fingerprints, right, is to do a background check. Depending on what you're applying for, let's say you're applying for school in the US, I don't know if the school that you did fingerprints for has a database that's available to the US government, right? So that's a different thing, but the US government is going to take your fingerprints and do a full background check on you, regardless of whether your fingerprints have ever been taken before or not. And they do a full Interpol background check, everything, to see if there's any records of you anywhere with any sort of negative connotations. So does not matter where you are, they're going to do that fingerprint to make sure they can say that you have a clean record that will allow you to come to the US. All right. So they're not really relying on other people's taking your fingerprints. They are going to take your fingerprints and do their research based on the fingerprints they get from you. And again, your fingerprints don't change anyway. So there's no reason for them to do that. All right. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. And if you're watching this live, please, right, not just if you're watching this live, if you're watching this live and you're getting value out of it, don't forget to hit the like button. It just lets me know that this is something that you all are interested in, and let other people know that they should come on and watch this video. So feel free to do that as well. Hi, Charles. Thanks for joining me. Again, if you have questions, please put them in the comments. And if I don't see any questions, I'll continue with the topic of today. Okay. So what can you do today that can help you get to your goal? Right? Because it's always scary. Starting is the scary part, right? Getting over that fear and actually taking the step. I know my clients that are the most afraid are the ones that are in the US and they do not have status. Right? Those are the clients that are most afraid to get started. And they're married to a US citizen and they don't know where to begin. Your first step is going to be to get a strategy session. That's your first step. Get a consultation. Let the person, right, the lawyer, tell you what you qualify for, what the process is going to be like for you in your particular situation. Because the more you delay it, it's not going away. You're not going to all of a sudden delay it and end up with status without any action from you, right? You have to take action. So the first thing, and the basic thing that you should do first, is to get a consultation, figure out what you qualify for, figure out the steps that you need to take, and know that you have a plan, right? That's the first step. Get a plan and then execute on the plan. That's how the goals work. Have a plan, execute on the plan. So I'll give you like a basic steps for someone that's in the US, entered without inspection, and wants to get their green card, and they're married to a US citizen. First step would be get your consultation, make sure you qualify. And then once you know that you qualify, we would do an I-130 right? To make sure that you get your I-130 approved. Then once that is approved, the next step after that is the waiver. So that's the I-601 waiver that will help you, right? The I-601 waiver is really important because it makes it possible for someone that entered the US without inspection, without any documentation, to be able to leave the US and go to their immigrant interview. And once approved, they're able to come back to the US without having to stay outside of the US for 10 years, depending on how long they've been in the US. So it is super important that you are doing things step by step. So first step is the I-130. Second step is the I-601A waiver. Once that is approved, then you start the third step, which is the getting all the documents to the embassy and getting scheduled for an interview at the embassy. And then once you have your interview, you will schedule your medical appointment. Some countries will have you also schedule biometrics appointment and your interview. So you'll have your medical, your biometrics, and your interview in your home country. Only when you have that, you have your waiver in your hand, you have that, then you leave the US, go to all your appointments, go to your interview, wait for that to be approved, and then come back to the US. So that would be the steps. In between all those steps, there's still steps that need to take place. So we always want to give our clients the plan. This is the plan. These are the documents for each stage. These are the things we'll need from you at this stage, and this stage. So once you know that, one thing I realize with my clients is once they know exactly what they need to do, the steps that need to be taken at each stage, because I don't want to overwhelm them, right? You don't want to feel overwhelmed, so you take it one stage at a time, because you know you can't get to stage 2 until you finish that I-130. So all your focus will stay on that, right? So you always want to do things in steps and make sure that you are following the plan as you go along, because that is the only way you get to the end. All right. Now, just wanted to see if there's any questions. Feel free to ask me questions. Hi, Mary. Thanks for joining me as always. So, such a good time when you are able to join. um, So if you're joining live, say hi. Say hi. And let me know in the comments if you have any questions. And if you have goals, right, let's speak it into existence, honestly. And start planning for it. Start doing things that will actually get you to the goal, not just have it in your head. Because, listen, I have so many plans in my head, but unless I actually like speak it into existence, write it down, stop planning towards it, it just does not happen. It just stays in my head, because if it's in my head, no one knows about it and no one knows that I didn't actually achieve it. So that's the things with this, right? You want to make sure that you are making your goals known and you are taking steps to make it happen. And I think that's also why people are sometimes hesitant to schedule strategy sessions, because now you're saying out loud what you want and someone is giving you the plan on how to achieve it, and you can't go back after you have a plan on how to achieve your goals, right? You have to now execute on it. So don't be afraid. That's how you can still do this. Don't be afraid. Take the steps. Go step by step, right? Don't stress out. Immigration can be so stressful, so complicated. But when you can break it down into smaller bite-sized pieces, that you can actually achieve it. All right. And as always, I am here for you, right? If, I know some people will reach out to me. They're like, Lily, I don't think I can afford your services, but can I ask you this question, right? You can come on the live and ask questions. And then when you are ready to really start putting action towards those goals, we can start working on your case. So just putting that out there. All right. So if you have questions, Put them in the comments. If not, um, I don't see any new questions. Perfect. So, reasons why you should file now and not wait election, right? And time, right? You don't want to wait too long because guess what? You may be looking at the processing time, you may be looking at the visa bulletin, and it is so far away. It is so far away. Excuse me. Yeah. So you may be looking at that and it seems so far away, but how long have you been waiting? What if the first time, excuse me, excuse me, what if the first time that came to your mind? I don't know what's going on with my voice, y'all. So, what if the first time, you thought about filing for your parents, you actually just went ahead and filed, right? How much time has it been? How long has it been since you had that thought in your mind and you haven't done anything about it? If you don't start, you will always look at the processing time and it will always discourage you from starting. But just think about how long you've waited so far. Isn't it time that you take those steps? Right? I have, how long have I been a citizen? Over 10 years. I've been in the US for a little over 20 years and I've had my citizenship, I believe, like 15 years. I am lucky because my parents also have their citizenship. I came to the US because my dad had his citizenship and was able to file for us, right? That's how. But if I was in a position where I had like siblings that I wanted to file for, if I filed the day I became a citizen, they would already be in the US. Think about it that way, right? So it's really, really important that you don't delay because you're looking at, oh my goodness, it's going to take so long. Put the application in, right? There may be other ways for the person to come to the US, but you're not going to know that today. And by the time you know it, you've been trying other things for 10 years and nothing has worked. So go ahead and put in that sibling petition and just let it sit there. Okay. And I have clients that do that. They just put it in. They're like, okay, we'll see what happens in like 10 years, 15 years, and we'll move forward from there. So set it and forget it. When you look at that processing time, don't look at it as it's a challenge. It's hard to get it out of your head, but go ahead and file regardless. All right. Question from Prince. I have a late registered birth certificate. Would that be an issue at the interview? Okay. Depends on where your interview is. So typically USCIS would, if you have like, again, I don't have any information, so I'm going to base it on like if you're filing an I-130 marriage petition. If USCIS looks at your birth certificate, it's late registered, they may ask you for documentation that is close to the time of your birth, like the medical cards that mothers get, baptismal certificates, things like that, right? To show that it is you, it is close to the time of your birth. So the late registered birth certificates are becoming an issue, right? They are flagging those more and more, but there are things you can use to overcome it. That's the thing with immigration. That's the thing with law. Yes, something may be an issue, but there's things you can do. There's things you can add to it to overcome it. So for a late registered birth certificate, you may want to look for your baptismal certificate. That's one of the ones they love. They also like using the school records. So something from primary school is usually best. Again, the younger, the better. All right. Could it be an issue? Yes, it could be an issue. Like almost anything can be an issue for an officer, but you want to be prepared for that and you want to have documentation to back up your age, to back up your identity. All right. Can you travel with advanced parole based on VAWA application while waiting for U visa to be available? Okay. So, so if you have advanced parole, you are allowed to travel outside of the US without abandoning the applications you have pending. That's the whole point of the advanced parole, right? The point of an advanced parole is that you can travel without the government automatically thinking that you are abandoning your applications. If you travel without it, they're going to come to that conclusion that you abandoned your application. So, can you travel? Yes. Um, and it just depends on, yes, you can travel. I just had a client travel for like, I think a week to visit family. And her advanced parole was based on a pending VAWA application as well. So, yes, you can, but you would want to, there's always a risk. Again, on this channel, you're going to get the truth. There's always a risk with traveling outside of the US when you're not a permanent resident or a citizen, right? There's always a risk that an officer at the airport is going to give you a hard time. There's always a risk. So make sure, what I typically tell people is make sure you have all your documentation, at least copies of all your documentation. If the advanced parole is not on your work permit card, you want to make sure that you're taking the original one with your picture on it with you. And then don't stay outside of the US too long. I think like 30 days or less is typically like a safe spot to be in. You just don't want any like questions of whether you want to actually stay in the US or not. You don't want those questions. So just make sure that you are you're not like staying out too long, all right? And that you have all your documentation with you. Those are the two things that you really want to be clear on. All right. So I don't see any other questions. And as always, if you found this helpful, hit the like button for me. If you are watching this on the replay and you have questions, please, please, please put them in the comments. I do go back and respond to those questions, okay? And if there's a specific topic, I know I haven't done this in a while, but if there's a specific topic you want me to cover that I have not covered in my hundreds of videos, please put them in the comments. Okay, let me know what that topic is, and I will make a video on it, and then comment on your question with that video. That's a promise. So ask me your question in the comments, and then if there's a question you have that you want a detailed explanation on, go ahead and put them in the comments, and I will make a video on it. How long does it take for USCIS to upgrade an I-130? By upgrade an I-130, do you mean from green card holder to citizen? Is that what, that's what we typically mean by upgrade. So if that's not what you mean, please put that in the comments as well, Prince. So typically, if you are filing an I-130 as a green card holder filing for family, once you become a citizen, you need to let USCIS know. Sometimes it's a quick process. If it's already, I know you said USCIS, so sometimes it's a quick process where once they receive it, they will update it in their system. What I like to do is going in and not only sending in the naturalization certificate showing that you are now a citizen, but also letting USCIS know through their contact form as well, or doing um, the live chat. Those are ways to do that. And typically after a month of sending that in, again, this is just our internal systems. So after a month of sending that in, we typically would call USCIS to confirm that the I-130 is showing as the spouse of a US citizen or the child of a US citizen. So that is our internal system with that, because sometimes they don't update it. Okay. And you only truly know what they have in their system if you reach out to them and they're able to tell you that. So, how long does it take? If it's at the service center, you send it and then follow up within like a month of sending it in. And if it's not updated yet, the customer service rep can escalate it and have someone reach out to you or have them update it internally, and then just let you know that it's done. So that's what we do. And then the same goes with, like, if there's a error in your receipt notice, like a name. We recently actually had this happen where we filed online and it transposed, like it put the last name as the first name and also the last name. So we had to do a telegraphic error request, basically asking them to put the right first name. And they were able to do that within, I think, 10 days. That was rectified. So it depends on how you're sending it to. If you're sending it by mail, it's going to take longer. If you have a My USCIS account and you're uploading it and requesting in the messages, if you're sending a message as well, that will be faster. Okay. So listen, I'm giving away all my secrets. That's how we do it here. We take all the steps to make sure that everything is reflecting properly. Yeah, if it's been more than a month, you just want to confirm. So when they receive it, they're not going to send you a notice saying that, oh, we updated this. You're not going to get that, just to let you know. So if you're waiting for them to send you something that confirms that they updated the category, you're not going to get it. Okay. The only way to really know is to call them and just confirm what the category is on their side as far as that's concerned. And then if it's not the right category, if it still says permanent resident, you want to ask them to for a tier 2 officer to rectify that. Yeah. All right. Hope that was helpful. I I thought this would be a quick one, but I love all your questions. Thank you so much for joining me, for asking your questions. It's always a good time. If you found value out of this, don't forget to hit that like button. If you have questions, ask it in the comments. And as always, thank you so much. And oh yeah, if you want to schedule a strategy session where we talk about your goals and how to get you there, go ahead and go to my website, lilylegal.com, and click on contact us. And you can pick a date and time that works best for you for us to chat. You can also call my office at 408-443-1788 to schedule that strategy session. Thank you all so much, and I will see you next week, I believe. Yes, we're going to be doing news and updates next week. And then the week after that is elections. I'm taking that week off. I'm taking that week off. But the week after that, we'll talk about what's going to happen elections, based on what happened with the election. So November 1st, news and updates. November 15th, we're going to deep dive into what to expect now that the election is over. All right. So I hope to see you all there. Bye.